I'm so excited to be here, and thanks for joining. If you can believe it, the first Max that I attended was as a Macromedia employee back in 2003. So this conference holds a special place in my heart. Now, I'd like to introduce you to my son, Titus. He feels most at home when he's splashing around in some sort of water while playing with his friends at school. Just look at him. He's unfazed by anything around him, and he's having an incredible time simply being himself. He feels this comfortable because he's in an environment where he feels like he belongs. And most importantly, this environment encourages him to be himself on a regular basis. I'd like for you to take a moment and think back to the most recent time when you felt true belonging, when you were free to be your true, authentic self. But belonging has become a fairly rare state that only a small subset of people actually experience on a regular basis, even though it's a critical human need. I love this quote by Maya Angelou. She has an incredible outlook on belonging. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. She points out that belonging is not about fitting in. It's not about becoming like other people to be accepted. Belonging is about being able to be yourself, your true self. Not just in one place, but every place. And as you become fully and truly comfortable in being yourself, there's no longer a nagging need to belong in any one place at all. So, how can design help support our most important but often most difficult undertaking of belonging? To simply feel comfortable being ourselves. This idea fascinates me because as a child, I struggled with belonging. You see, I grew up in rural Japan, and let's just say that I stood out. See the little girl behind me? That's the look of shock that followed me throughout my childhood. You'll see it in every photo from that time period. There are photo albums full of that same expression. I was forced to confront exclusion at a very young age in a unique way. And the trick is to always use that telescope as a tool to find out what makes other people special too. Now, understanding that I had a telescope was, and still is, a gift. It's what enabled me to overcome exclusion and establish a sense of belonging in the world. It's also what's driven my entire career as a designer, which, if you speed forward 30 years or so, has led me to Airbnb, where I lead design teams across Airbnb's design studio. It's where we try to deliver against this grand promise. It's a mission. At the heart of our mission is the idea that people are fundamentally good, and every community is a place where you can belong. To me, this is a promise that feels bold. It feels big, and especially relevant in the times we live in today. That's because there are 7.4 billion people on the planet. 7.4 billion people, all yearning to feel belonging, and all with the capacity to create belonging as well. Now, to overcome such a massive scale, we use technology as a way to facilitate belonging. But technology has a unique way of reinforcing our bias. Take something as fundamental as speech recognition. In 2012, the error rate of automated speech recognition reached human parity. That's what enables all the great speech-enabled functions in your car, on your phone, in your homes, etc. But let's hone in on this notion of human parity. How do we define human parity? Parity with which humans? All humans or just some? And how is that parity expressed culturally? Well, the reality is that underrepresented groups in the data sets used for speech recognition and other technologies tend to be the same groups that are underrepresented in society. A typical database of American voices, for example, would lack rural, underrepresented, and non-native English voices. The more of those categories you fall into, the worse speech recognition is for you. For instance, if you have a Southern accent, or any accent, you're less likely to be understood.
I can teach you how to talk Southern. So here we go. 4, I think, maybe 5, I don't remember what I counted, steps to being Southern. Step number 1, words that should generally be 1 syllable are probably 2. So words like it and is and 1 syllable.
In most cases, these types of accents get the same response from machines that I used to get as a child. In 2020, to the National Academy of Sciences this year, found out that the top 5 speech recognition technologies misidentified an average of 35% more words from rural, underrepresented, and non-native English voices. These disparate results show how some of the biases in the real world can seep into our products and services to impact millions of potential users. Anyone familiar with what telephone voice is? Your telephone voice is the most normalized version of your voice that you can create. It's devoid of any personal patina or culture. Now, we typically use this when we're on the telephone with someone that we don't know. This is also called accent leveling or dialect leveling. In effect, people are using their inauthentic telephone voice more in everyday life, partly due to the difficulty using speech recognition. In the case of people with accents that differ from homogeneous data sets, if you don't use your telephone voice, you can be excluded from using technology, which then creates a bias loop. Bias in technology is often driven by a terrible feedback loop. If machines aren't good at understanding you, you feel excluded, which means you're less likely to talk to them or use them, leading to the systems that get less data about you, which reinforces the original bias, and the cycle starts again. This creates an experience gap, a class of people for whom speech technologies work well, and another for whom they don't. In these cases, a functional challenge can also be conflated with a societal challenge. This device doesn't understand me gets conflated with this system doesn't understand me. The harms of technological bias are numerous and far-reaching. Think about the impact of this type of bias multiplied across every commercial and municipal system that technology permeates. The potential harms from biased technology are tremendous, from stereotype reinforcement to loss of jobs, loss of liberty, housing, and education opportunities. It all comes down to this. What we design is a byproduct of how we design. Homogeneous teams create homogeneous products, often derivative of homogeneous data. Homogeneous teams reinforce bias. They rarely curb bias. Good design is by definition the art of solving human problems, not just for some humans, but for all humans. It builds on what is universally human, yet still celebrates what is unique about us all. I believe a designer's greatest asset is human diversity, learning from people with a range of perspectives. In fact, I personally believe that great design is inherently kind. The singular focus of constantly trying to add value to people's lives, day in and day out, delight them and empower them, literally is the essence of kindness. I don't think we talk about this enough as part of our craft, and I know that this lens can equip us with a very unique way to see the world and impact it. At Airbnb, we work from 3 principles that guide our design practice of belonging: confront inequity, be a host, and evolve with culture. Confronting inequity. One way to confront inequity is to unite your community of users around equitable practices. For us, it's the first signal that users receive on our platform. Back in 2016, we rolled out a policy that made it mandatory for anyone who uses Airbnb to explicitly agree to a non-discrimination standard. This commitment rests on 2 foundational principles that apply both to Airbnb's hosts and guests: inclusion and respect. Our shared commitment to these principles enables every member of our community to feel welcome on the Airbnb platform, no matter who they are, where they come from, how they worship, or whom they love. While we do not believe that one company can mandate harmony among all people, we do believe that the Airbnb community can promote empathy and understanding across all cultures. We are all committed to doing everything we can to help eliminate all forms of unlawful bias, discrimination, and intolerance from our platform. We want to promote a culture within the Airbnb community hosts, guests, and people just considering whether to use our platform that goes beyond and above mere compliance. This policy goes on to outline exactly what hosts on the platform may not do in relation to several categories of discrimination: age, race, ethnicity, family status, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation, and even just personal preference. Violations of these requirements result in expulsion from the platform. So we take this commitment seriously. Discrimination is still a threat, so we continue developing new ways to fight it. We have several teams dedicated to confronting inequity and removing barriers to belonging. Each team is focused on closing an experience gap for marginalized communities, whether it be the anti-discrimination team. They're dedicated to building inclusion within each product and feature. We have our trust and safety team focused on how we keep our community safe. We have a globalization and localization team and a digital accessibility team as well. As these teams have impacted the way we approach product decisions, our product thinking has evolved substantially.
Combating discrimination means understanding just how complex the problem truly is. So Airbnb has partnered with leading civil rights groups and privacy experts to create entirely new processes to help determine when people's experiences differ based on how their race is perceived. By pinpointing when discrimination might be happening, we can work together to put a stop to it. This begins with using information people on Airbnb already share, like first names and profile photos, to help us understand the race someone else might see them as. It's important because understanding how someone is perceived can help prevent them from being discriminated against in the first place. We know it can feel scary when companies use your personal information, even for projects like fighting discrimination. So it's important you know how we protect it and how seriously we take your privacy.
Before we use this information for this work, identifiable details are removed so that they will not be tied back to
Any account on Airbnb. We do all this because it's the right thing to do, and because a community that works together to be more inclusive benefits us all, no matter your background. We open more doors, create more human connections, and build more trust amongst every host and guest. Your support is essential to this journey. Protecting your information and making the platform better for everyone is how we all work towards a world where anyone can belong anywhere.
That was an introduction to Project Lighthouse, our latest initiative in the United States to uncover, measure, and overcome discrimination when booking or hosting on Airbnb. Racial discrimination is based on perception. Airbnb has partnered with several civil rights organizations, the Color of Change, Upturn, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, the Center for Democracy and Technology, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, LULAC, and the National Action Network. Currently, Project Lighthouse is only happening in the US. Next up, just be a host. Now this one seems fairly intuitive, yet it's rarely fully embraced. A good example to follow is from hosts who open their doors to strangers every day.
I don't care where you're from, we're all just people.
You want people to feel like they spent time with family.
We want to create a place for more than just ourselves.
We create the things that we want to exist in the world.
My doors are always open.
Hosts make conscious choices that remove barriers to belonging. When you're a host, you care for others and make them feel like they belong. You encourage others to participate to their fullest, and you thoughtfully listen and communicate openly. A host mentality is needed now more than ever. The stress and fear that have come from this pandemic, along with the global loss and isolation required to combat this, are the perfect ingredients for psychological trauma and even post-traumatic stress disorder. On one side, you have COVID-19 responders in particular making tremendous sacrifices as they face grueling hours, unexpected separation from their loved ones, and painful decisions in their personal and professional lives. Doctors and healthcare professionals around the world are making the decision to self-isolate. Some even moving into tents in their garage to avoid the possibility of infecting their family with the coronavirus. Airbnb hosts are experiencing financial uncertainty with no clear end in sight. They may also be grappling with COVID-19 in their personal lives as they face disruptions in childcare, separation from family members, and potentially providing care for family members who have COVID-19 or may be on the front lines. Yet hosts are still willing to support healthcare workers in their communities. So if you take a step back, there's an important need here. How might we take care of COVID-19 responders and also hosts in the midst of this difficult time? Well, inspired by a community of hosts who are willing to open their doors, Frontline Stays has been born. With this launch, we worked with our host community to offer comfortable and convenient places to stay to first responders and their families in need of accommodation. Following the lead of our host, we developed a platform to enable frontline stays in order to reduce barriers to belonging. And it looks like this.
I feel a moral obligation to continue my work on the front line, but I also felt a moral obligation to protect my family. There's so many little decisions that have to be made, and one of the huge ones that have to be made from our point of view is, when do I move out? How do I move out? Can I afford to move out?
Morning. I just wanted to give you my first interaction with my nurse buddy. She had a good night of sleep, which I'm really happy because I know she didn't have a lot of restful nights of sleep when she was at home with 2 little girls to worry about.
Having a place donated took a huge burden off my shoulders. Just the emotional part of feeling supported by my community.
I feel really good about being able to give Margie a safe place to be so that she can take care of people, and that's what it's all about. All right, take care, bye.
Now that's a great example of being a host. Again, when you're a host, you make conscious choices that remove barriers to belonging. You care for others and make them feel like they belong, and you encourage others to participate to their fullest. Yet, even though we find that hosts are willing or even excited to give back, they're also in a very unfamiliar circumstance. They're trying to make complex decisions during a potentially overwhelming and difficult time. Which leads us to our next and final practice, evolving with culture. It's all about addressing shifts in behaviors through the lens of inclusion. After developing Frontline Stays, we could have just put a banner on our homepage, but we kept talking with hosts and governments to understand what kind of help they needed. In large part, that was looking at the behavior of our guests on our platform in real time to address new ways that our community was using our platform. For instance, as the world continued to shelter in place, we were inspired by the search behavior on our site trending towards longer stays. So we built an easier way for hosts to accept longer stays and launched a new monthly stays search option, enabling guests to easily find comfortable and affordable homes for a month or longer, evolving with culture. We also quickly acted on the insight that guests wanted to connect while in quarantine, and that hosts from around the world were looking for new ways to earn income. Online Experiences was launched to allow people to connect despite their separation. Our goal became to allow guests to attend virtually a tango concert with a Latin Grammy nominee, or cook alongside a Moroccan family in an intimate setting, all virtually and all, again, despite quarantine.
Italy! I hope you guys are good. I know it's complicated there.
I was waiting for someone else.
I think about 110 concerts last year in real life.
So, just 3 weeks after the pandemic, we shifted our user experience to focus on 3 things: frontline stays, monthly stays, and online experiences, all based on evolving with culture and behavior of our community. So in summary, once you've confronted inequity, learned to be a host, and evolved with culture, problem solving through the lens of belonging becomes how you drive your product forward. It becomes how you build your team. It becomes the way you connect with your community of customers. And as it turns out, these values might be even more relevant in a world where inclusive solutions are ever more necessary. A belief in the purpose of belonging allows you to design for inclusion to create better products that serve the needs of more people. In essence, Design for Belonging is about empowering people to be themselves. Because whether you are physically disabled, white, black, urban, rural, male, female, young, or old, we all have the innate yearning to belong and to be fulfilled from a sense of belonging, especially those of us who are a little unique and maybe even a little out of place, which, if you think about it, is actually all of us. Thank you.